So towards the night before Christmas and all through the night, whoever wanted the sequel, I'd probably punch you tonight. All right. So let's talk about Bad Santa 2. So Bad Santa 2 is a sequel, particularly comedy sequel. And let's be real here, them shits don't really tend to work. From Dumb and Dumber 2 to Zoolander 2. But then sometimes you get a little bit surprised with a comedy sequel, which is like Wayne's World 2 or Hot Shots Part 2. You know, sometimes they tend to kind of be a little bit surprised. Now, where does Bad Santa 2 kind of fit into that pile? Does it fit into the shitty or does it kind of fit into the surprising? Well, after watching this, I gotta be honest, this thing kind of fits into the hot pile of holiday garbage, just to begin with. Now, for me, Bad Santa 2 is not completely a bad movie per se, but it sure is fucking really a good one. Now, the problem with Bad Santa 2 is just that it falls into the same problem like most comedy sequels. It's just that they try to rehash the same shit as the first one. But unfortunately, while doing that, they essentially lose the essence of what made the first one work. For some fucking reason, they just kind of force shit. Now, for Bad Santa 2, it's just that I feel like the biggest problem was that it tried to be exactly like the first one in a lot of ways, a lot of homages, whatever it may be, and that nothing really works. In the first one, you had kind of this very vulgar movie and sometimes probably even offensive. But at the end of the day, it kind of had like a nice, message for the most part, a little warmth to it. But it was a movie that didn't rely on too many jokes or zingers per se, but it relied on the characters for the most part inside of these situations. A very situational type of comedy and telling truth, which is pretty much the way, Christmas pretty much is, and that's where the kind of comedy came through to begin with. Now, for this one, they are back to being offensive. They are back to being vulgar. It still has that Christmas type of cheer to it. The problem is everything kind of feels a little bit forced. Bad Santa 2 feels like a movie or pretty much a person that just kind of seems like he's past his prime. Thing is, the shit that kind of worked in the first one, that's great, and it still holds up for the most part in that movie, but in this movie, it just kind of feels very, very forced. I'm talking about a lot of the shits. Because I feel like this movie tries to be too much, tries to be a little bit too offensive. And I don't give a shit if you're going to be offensive, but at least make the offensive shit kind of funny. And I feel like all they're trying to do is just kind of like yell and banter and do whatever it may be, and none of the shit is really sticking, and they just constantly keep on doing it. They're not trying to one-up the last movie. They're just trying to one-up the last fucking joke, and therefore everything kind of falls flat and nothing really works. The stuff that they do kind of like rehash from the first one, some of it kind of works and some of it really doesn't. Billy Bob Thornton, Tony Collette and Kathy Bates, they do a really good job. And Billy Bob Thornton is great at being a scumbag and doing the same shit he did 13 years ago. But I don't want to see that shit again in another movie. Completely. I don't want to see the exact same movie again, pretty much. He can do the exact same thing, but I don't want to see the exact same film, per se. Because if I'm going to see that, why pay $12, for a movie that I can pretty much save $12 for by watching the original, which is a much more better film just to begin with. Now, all of the cast kind of do a pretty good job, even though Christina Hendricks, oh boy, does not really have that great of a chemistry with Billy Bob Thornton. Now, don't get me wrong, I like to bend her over a barrel and show her 50 states, but seeing her and Billy Bob Thornton getting on an alley just kind of gets a little bit tiresome sometimes. And even though, hearing her say that filthy stuff, it's actually quite, amazing. But it doesn't really add anything new. The movie just tries to be too filthy and raunchy and whatever it may be. And like I said, it tries to be too cool for the most part. And when you try to be too cool, you just kind of come across as just like not. Just to begin with, and that's kind of the biggest problem with Bad Santa. The offensive stuff with, the kid or whatever it may be, that's great, but the kid feels like he's just out of place. They just brought him back because it's like, hey, that shit kind of worked in the first one, let's bring him back in this one. The thing about the movie is just that it's not really that funny. The jokes really don't land, as I said before, and you still kind of get in the same shit that kind of was in the first one. What's the positives of this movie? Billy Bob Thornton, I guess Kathy Bates, and then, Tony Cox for the most part. You get a little bit of like some character background on why Willie is kind of a dickhead. But even then, it's just like, do we really even need to see that? The whole essence of his character is being a dick. And we kind of like him for being a dick. But that's just kind of it. Now, overall, Bad Santa 2 is not really a memorable movie. And it's probably not a movie you probably want to see the next Thanksgiving weekend unless you have a really fucked up family. But I don't make judgments. The thing about this film, one last thing about this film, is that it's just kind of a waste of time. And it just feels like it's just a dinosaur of the past. There's a lot of movies that kind of have came since Bad Santa has premiered, back in 2003, that just kind of, one up the movie. And I feel like the movie just tried to be like, hey, let's take back the throne of being filthy and raunchy, and that's kind of it. It just tries to one up the filthiness, and it doesn't really feel natural like the first one. It just kind of feels forced. But that's my thought on Bad Santa 2. If you actually want to go see it, go ahead, go see it. It's a fun time for all the fucked up family in the world. But if you don't, then I suggest you probably see anything else. But that's just my thought and that's my opinion. Now, if you actually enjoyed this review, which you probably didn't, but if you did, comment, subscribe, and like. I'm Chris Smith. Subscribe. That could really help me out. I'm signing out.